Tonight is all about helping your kids learn to love reading. Reading is just for life. There's nothing that you do that doesn't involve reading. And you don't even realize how often you're doing it. You're just doing it. And so we want to instill the love of reading so everyone can read. Reading leads to lifelong success. It starts with babies and it goes all the way up until basically, if you're living, you need to read. And so tonight we're going to talk about how we introduce maybe some reading skills to babies and toddlers and go over some old nursery rhymes, hopefully bring back some feelings of nostalgia for the things that you did when you were in elementary school, or how we used reading every single day, repetitive texts. We always have a lot of fun with those. How do you build on what they know in elementary school so that when they become older, they still use that? And there's going to be some facts that I introduce later on in the PowerPoint presentation. There's a did you know section with some facts that maybe you don't know, maybe you do know. And then there will be a question and answer period after the PowerPoint is done. So with that said, that's the agenda. Reading is used every day in a variety of ways. And so for road signs, for text messages, for emails, for messages on TV, for navigation of the internet. And this is the one I struggle with because they always give me directions to put things together when I buy things, but I think they leave some things out. I always have leftover parts, but that's an interesting one. Instructions, directions, information, menus. I could go on and on and on. The point of this is not for me to read from this PowerPoint, but just to put up things that you might not even realize, hey, I'm reading, because it's just a thing that you do. You don't say, oh, I'm going to read now. You just do it, and hopefully we get kids to proficiency for reading, so they just know this is just what we do. And so with that said, hopefully in the next few slides, we can go over some interesting things to do to start building that reading skill in children. Okay, so in babies and toddlers. Many parents don't realize that they are their child's first teacher. They are the one that introduces reading at the very, very, very beginning. And a strong foundation of reading is when it all starts. And it's never too late to get started reading. Just reading for a few minutes a day. And then over time, it just builds using rhymes, songs, and just to teach basic language. It's all about that reading. So here is one of my very favorite ones, and hopefully it'll bring back a childhood memory for you.
Hickory dickory dock, the mouse went up the clock. The clock struck one, the mouse went down. Hickory dickory dock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. A snake. Hickory dickory dock, the snake went up the clock. The clock struck two, the snake went down. Hickory dickory dock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. A squirrel. Hickory dickory dock, the squirrel went up the clock. The clock struck three, the squirrel went down. Hickory dickory dock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. A cat. Hickory dickory dock, the cat went up the clock. The clock struck four.
There are actually YouTube videos of many classics available on the internet. That just happens to be one. nursery rhymes being the first type of books that we really introduce to children and that we can sing along with or read along with or just know by heart because it's that repetitiveness in the story. I've taken some time on the next slide to outline some other popular nursery rhymes because automatically I think of I'm a little teapot and then short and stout and pick me up and pour me out. And I think of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, the Itsy Bitsy Spider. And I remember doing a little hand dance with that. And even with the toes, This Little Piggy Went to Market. There are many, many, many of them that we all are very familiar with. And each of these books is available on YouTube that easily you can have access to. So if you don't have books at home, everybody has a phone and everybody can Google. It's something that you can definitely use that would be positive to interact reading in your child. And so on this slide, I wanted to emphasize that, letters and games and sounds and I spy things like I spy something in the room that starts with the letter A. And kids actually have fun with that or going over books or magazines and looking for specific things like letters or find the letter that sounds like this. And just short brief lessons in time. It doesn't have to be anything long. And eventually those sounds and letters go onto paper and then those letters become words and then words you can learn to read and write at the same exact time. And it's an interesting journey learning to read. And kids really like to build their confidence over time with, hey, I know this letter. From this letter, I know this word. And it just strengthens those skills. Now, if at any point anyone that's listening that has a question, please, by all means, stop me. When I've done this before, it's been more interactive. I don't want to present this as it's new information, but it's information that we all can be reminded of so that we can continue to help our kids learn how to read. And so here's another one, and it's that repetitive text that I keep talking about, the little engine that could. And that's that I think I can. I'm not going to play that video, which is the one that immediately follows this text, but it's certainly another one of those repetitive texts. Now, can you think of any books that have repetitive text?
Does anyone want to offer a book with repetitive text?
Yeah, we had one we read when she was younger. It was called The Little Blue Truck, and she absolutely loved that one.
So tell me, what was the repetitive text in that book?
It was more repetitive on each page. They were encouraging Little Blue, the farm animals, and everything. So it was the Little Blue Truck was repetitive on each page.
Okay. There are some of my favorite texts, like llama, llama, mad at mama. Those are a couple, and then we'll go on to the next couple slides so we can share what's on the screen. Now, brown bear, what do you see? And of course, the repetitive text in that book is brown bear. But the Three Little Pigs, what was that repetitive text?
Little pig, let me in.
Or what will happen?
Up by the hair of my chinny chin chin.
Thank you so much. What about Five Little Monkeys?
Jumping on the bed because one falls off every time. So we can't do the countdown of the monkeys, but it's X little monkeys jumping on the bed. One fall off and bump his head.
Thank you so much.
It's a
You
winner.
are absolutely correct. And I'm going to give the hardest one to Lori. The repetitive text in the book, No, David.
And the funny part about this is, Pam, is that my first name is David. My mom bought this book for me when I was about 35 years old because it reminded her of me when I was that age. And for the life of me, I cannot remember the repetitive text in that book. Anyone? No, David? Well, yeah, No, David. Is that the only thing that repeats? Because
Yes. I'm like,
Well,
that's
there
the
you
only
go.
thing. And so, like, that's another series that we absolutely enjoy. And what happens is little kids take these books and you get tired of reading them because oftentimes they select the same book over and over again. Like they've never heard it. First, they listen to you reading it, and then you read it together. And eventually, they're so excited about it because they can read it alone because there's so much repetition. And so I thank you for that participation. So let's see what happens next. So we went with the toddlers and the babies with the nursery rhymes and the repetitive text. Let's see what comes next. Now we're with the elementary kids. And this is, something that's really interesting because we all know that kids love stickers, and kind of like a Post-it's like a sticker. And so you could put Post-its on everything in your house and label it, and then they start referring those items to those words, and then they could draw pictures, and eventually everything leads to story time or writing a story. And so it's really, an interesting thing. Elementary kids really like putting these things together. And so this is just a side story. It's really not a part of the presentation, but it's something that happened to me today. So one of the preschool teachers was out today, and so I got to be a part of the preschool program today, and the little girl did not get picked up. Her name was Layla. And I said, your name is Layla, and Layla starts with an L, but I couldn't find her emergency card anywhere because nobody picked her up. And she goes, my name starts with an M. And I go, but Layla starts with an L. And she goes, my name starts with an M. I said to her, prove it, because everyone since school has started has called you Layla. She goes, I know, but my name starts with an M. So I said, prove it. So in the classroom, there are centers, and the teacher has their names on laminated something with Velcro on the back. And so she goes to get her name tag, and I'll be darned, her name starts with M. And she goes, see, right here, my name starts with an M. I said, well, how do you say it? She goes, I don't know. Everybody calls me Layla. And so she knew for a fact that her name was My Layla, but she found her label in the classroom, and the classroom is labeled, and everywhere it is labeled. And so she was able to use that skill of finding her name, and she was able to help me get her emergency card so we can call somebody to pick her up. And so it does work when you label things, and hopefully eventually she will be called her correct name, which I'll be calling her that starting tomorrow. But it was an interesting opportunity to see if that label wasn't there, we would have been going around. I mean, eventually we would have figured it out, but she was able to help me navigate her own problem. And so on this next thing, you can make a game out of reading. And so I'm going to ask you to take a look at this, making the game out of reading. You have to point out the characters. You have to figure out what their names are, what they like, describe them, point out the setting. Where is it? What's the character's name right now? What is it like there? What's the plot? What's the character doing? And what do you think will happen next? So I'm going to tell you a story, and I want to see if you can figure out in this reading game how many of these questions you can get right. And this is a story, but I don't have a book. So I'm going to stop share, try anyway, and I'm going to get the camera back on me.
There you go.
There I am. Okay. Can you see me?
Yes.
Can you see this piece of paper?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the story that I'm going to share with you. Remember the questions in the previous slide as I share the story with you. There was a little girl, and the only thing that she had in life was this piece of paper. and she was sad because that's all that she had. This is the only thing in life that she owned. So one day she was coming home from somewhere and she didn't have a bunch of money. Her family didn't have a bunch of money, but she cherished this piece of paper. But one day it started raining and the paper started flailing and it went every single place but where it was supposed to be. So she goes, that's it. I'm folding this piece of paper in half. I have to have this piece of paper. It's what I need to have. So when she took this piece of paper, she said, it's raining, my paper's getting all wet, my hair's getting all wet, and this is certainly going to be an issue. I don't want to have an issue. I just want to keep my very special piece of paper, and then we'll be able to move on. I'll be able to have my most prized possession, and then I'll be able to move on. 1 second, I'm folding it. And so she goes, I have to keep this piece of paper. I have to keep her name was Sally, by the way. I have to keep this piece of paper. I have to keep it intact, but my clothes are getting all wet. I really, really don't have much, but I have to make the best of this possession that I have. And she goes, I know what's going to happen. With her piece of paper, she made it into a hat. And then all of a sudden it covered her hair and she was happy and she protected her paper. And then people go, wow, I want one of those. How do I get one of those? This is the greatest thing ever. So she sold these to millions of people and she was able to get a whole bunch of money. And with that money, she was able to buy diamonds. And just like in real life, when people weren't real happy that she had nothing, and then all of a sudden she was able to sell her hat business and she could buy diamonds. People do what they do sometimes. And what they did was they said, well, now she thinks she's better than everyone. Hold on. Now she thinks she's better than everyone because she has money. And it made her really sad because the only thing she wanted in life was her one little piece of paper, her most prized possession. But people sometimes can just be mean. So what she did was she took her business and she bought a yacht and she sailed far, far away. And when she sailed far, far away, she said, now what will I do? Now what will I do? And she goes, I sold my hat business. I really don't need all the diamonds. I just want to do something that's productive. So she sold her boat. And with the money, she opened up a brand new business. And what she made is something that's still very important today. She designed the very first t-shirt, and it's still what we have today. The point of the story is, it doesn't matter what you have, it matters what you do with it. And so, remember, let's go back to the slideshow. So we just made a game out of a story. Does anybody remember the name of the character?
Mrs. Sutton says Sally.
Absolutely. And what was she like?
What was Sally like? Mrs. Sutton is on fire. She said persistent and determined.
Great. And what did you like about Sally, if anything?
Creativity was an answer in the audience.
Last question. What was the moral of that story?
I like this story. So it's not what you have, it's what you make of it.
Absolutely correct. If I had stickers, I'd be walking around your audience handing out stars. Thank you for your attention to that story. And that is true. In life, that's what that's all about. So we've talked about the elementary and and you could see how a kid could get very actively involved in that story or be motivated to make up their own story. And so here are some other things that you could do. You could have a timed reading. You can challenge people to say, okay, we're going to take the next 5 minutes and just read. Or you can act out a story. Many little people don't mind acting out a story or playing a part. You could be the big bad wolf and I'll be the grandmother if that's the road that you want to take. Or write a book and encourage kids that you can write a book review. You can say, hey, I really liked it. Or you can say, I didn't like it at all and this is why. Or we all know the game I Spy. And so as we're moving through the elementary section for older children, there are many things that could be done. There were some handouts that were available for this, that will be sent for this workshop. And a lot of the strategies that are offered on these next couple of screens for older children will be shared specifically in those handouts. And it's really interesting because a lot of times kids like movies, but a lot of movies are based upon books. And it's interesting when we do that compare and contrast. Well, what did you like about the movie? What was in the book that wasn't in the movie? Because a lot of times people don't realize that when you make a book a movie, there's a lot of stuff that's in the book that may or may not be in the movie. And just watch those movies, getting that book. No, you can offer choices. You can do a graphic novel. It may trigger an interest of something else. And just be a role model. The more children see that we enjoy reading, they might take on the love of reading as well. And so, like the big picture is sometimes no matter what you do, you cannot, some children just don't enjoy it. But we know that all kids like something. And so we know that some people love cars. Well, cars come with manuals. And there are some people that like to tinker with the cars. So there's books about how you tinker with cars. Some people just want to read the manuals. Well, how do you make the windshield wipers work? Or how do you make this work? That involves reading. I love the Shel Silverstein poem that the workshop was kicked off with. I think he's an amazing writer. Comic books are always interesting because I think the Batman movie, is it the Batman movie this weekend? It surpassed all expectation. And comic books, there's all those superheroes. I would say newspapers, but they're not as easy to find as they used to be. But there are online newspapers, online magazines, certainly menus. One of the favorite things that I like to do with my mother is we had cookbooks. And so we practice math and reading with making stuff together. So here's that did you know section that we so graciously talked about. And this is we kind of know this, but it's different when we see the statistics here. Before the pandemic, 65% of America's fourth graders weren't reading at a proficient level. And non-readers have a limited ability to obtain or understand essential information. And over a lifetime, if you can't read, your opportunities are way less. Where you live, what you drive, all of that stuff is dictated by your income, and you're not generating much income if reading is not something that you do well. And so this next screen is always interesting to me. For the benefits of reading, it's mental stimulation, it's stress reduction. Can anybody in the audience name what they go to reading for? Like, it says it's a stress reduction. Does anybody use reading for stress reduction or expanding their vocabulary or improving their memory? Anyone out there do anything like that?
We have an avid reader whose stress relief is to read everything under the sun, romance, adventure, and so on and so forth. Anybody else have a favorite thing to read? Doesn't sound strange. I'm all for that. That's great. Yeah. She reads her Bible for stress reduction or for knowledge and mindset.
That's I like both of your examples. And even I have a friend, she loves the pool. You can't ever get her out of a pool, but you don't ever see her the water ever touch her. She's always laying on a raft with a book. And so she has a nice tan and she's well read. I don't think that she's ever swam, but it's just the way that she actually relaxes. I wish I had more time to do that. So let's see what's next. This slide right here is probably one of the most powerful slides in this whole entire presentation. And I'm going to take time to really talk about this slide. So we have student A, we have student B, and we have student C. And I didn't create any of this information. I just find that if you can't find a more compelling reason to help all kids learn how to read, I don't know how else to sell it. So student C reads 1 minute a day. 1 minute a day is 180 minutes per school year. It's 8,000 words per year. This student, with what they read and how long they read, they will score in the 10th percentile on a standardized test. That means that 90% of the children that take a standardized test will score higher than this child. Student B reads 5 minutes a day. That's 900 minutes per school year. It's 282,000 words per year. This student will score in the 50th percentile on standardized tests. That means that 50% of the kids will score below, but at least it's better than reading 1 minute a day. Now, and this is research-based. This is not anything that I'm making up. But for just 20 minutes a day, student A reads just 20 minutes. 3,600 words per school year. Look at the difference between student A and student C. And that student will score in the 90th percentile on standardized tests. It's just 19 minutes difference, but over a lifetime, you could see how it could really make a change. And down in the bottom, if they start reading for 20 minutes per night in kindergarten, by the end of the 6th grade, student A will have read for the equivalent of 60 school days. Student B will have read for 12 school days, and student C will have read for 3 school days. That's from kindergarten to 6th grade. And now you can see why reading as early and as often and as much is more important than ever. Has anyone seen this chart before?
Anyone? I think this is a chart no one has seen before. And it is very
But
compelling.
But I think that if we're talking to parents about reading, or if you're helping your kid to learn to read, we always believe reading is for knowledge and knowledge is power. I think that you can't really, the research says it for itself. You got to find a way to help all kids learn how to read, because the discrepancy just builds over time. And we want to close that reading gap. Just simply picking up a book for 20 minutes a day to be something. We all have books or access to books. Let's put them in the hands of children and instill the love of reading. One little thing could make a massive change. Yep. And so that's what I have to present. I do have some other repetitive books that certainly I have come to love. Click, Clack, Moo, Cows That Type, and they're silly books. But it doesn't matter what the book, it doesn't matter whether it's a poem or a manual or anything, whatever we can do to help kids learn how to read, let's just do it. It just makes perfect sense. And so now is the time, and I do apologize for the early on technical difficulties, but I'm real passionate about what I do in helping spread the love of reading. And I hope that if nothing else, each of you have picked up a little nugget that you can share. And I could even have Jim send separately that 20-minute reading chart so that you can put that in the hand to compel parents to help their kids learn to love to read, or that information that we can just put out anywhere. And so this is the point in the presentation that I would ask if there are any questions.
My biggest thing with my fourth grader is getting her to find something she likes to read. I mean, that's our problem. I mean, she likes to read books that have lots of pictures with 2 or 3 words on a page, and she's above that. So how do I get her to again, I understand she's not a reader. She's not going to be a reader like me, but she needs to be able to do the 20 minutes a day. So how do I introduce her to find out what she likes? I mean, that's my biggest.
But in life, without a book in her hand, what does she like to do?
Gymnastics.
Gymnastics. And so there are moves that they have in gymnastics. There are strategies that you can use for gymnastics. I find that in order to improve her gymnastic skills, are there other gymnasts that have written things so that they can share their experience? I would find that if she likes that, then maybe you can incorporate some of that into what she might be reading about, just so that she can improve her gymnast skills.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what the topic is, it's getting that book in hand.
Okay.
Hello, I'm actually Dr. Koch and I work with Pam. I'm not, and I sadly hate to admit this in education, I'm not a lover of reading, but I am a lover of short articles and magazine articles. For me to sit down with a 300-page book is not going to happen. I will be openly honest about that. But if you give me a 1-page magazine article about something that interests me, I'm happy to read it. So if she loves gymnastics, I'm sure Simone Biles has small articles about herself out there, or what she overcame, or some of the other gymnasts that are out there. That's my love of reading is short stuff, mostly nonfiction, to find out information. And it's still 20 minutes of reading. It's just not a book that you're sitting, attached to.
Yeah, thanks for that idea. I'll have to go look for stuff and get that for her. Thank you.
So I'm the parent. I have a 9-year-old in 3rd grade who's a struggling reader. He's dyslexic. And we have found something he enjoys reading, but it is a struggle to get him to sit down for like 20 minutes to read something. Do you have any suggestions for that?
And so what happens is it said 20 minutes a day. It didn't say 20 consecutive minutes per day.
Okay. So it could
And
be,
so
it could be broken up.
absolutely. And because what happens is most little kids have a very short attention span. And if we make reading a chore, we're actually going to get the opposite reaction that we're hoping to do with instilling reading. And so what happens is maybe he loves reading, and maybe there's something that he really loves. Again, those short excerpts, like the game would be, let's read together. I'm going to read these 3 sentences and you read these 3. And then maybe the next time I'm going to read these 4 and then you read the next 4. And so you're interacting together and you're doing it, not you better sit down and read this whole book, because that's really a turnoff for little kids. But maybe today you start with, here's this book. We're going to read it 1 sentence at a time. And it might take a long time initially if he reads a sentence and you read a sentence, or let him pick out a topic, let him pick out an article, a comic book, something that attracts his attention initially. So, because reading would be a struggle if you have a reading issue, but eventually, and maybe it's you read the sentence correctly and he mimics you, just so that he hears the way that it's supposed to be. And so there's not a one size fits all approach, but we can sneak it in. Like whatever that might be. And so maybe you read, he reads, you read together, and then he reads independently. Whatever structure works. That 20 minutes could be over an entire day initially.
Okay, I think that would be more workable in this situation, to be honest, so thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you for the question.
I guess my question would be, Pam, your thought on this is that Mrs. Sutton and some of our other staff have brought some assistive technology pieces to the district, like Read, Write, Google, and all of our students in the district are one-to-one. In kindergarten, they're iPads, but for the most part, they're Chromebooks and such. But, you know, it has a pretty, great tool in text-to-speech. And, yeah, it's not perfect in terms of intonation and those kinds of things. But, for struggling readers, in your mind, is it okay to use this tool to help the student, not be as taxed with the process of reading? Yeah, they shouldn't do that all the time, of course, but, for some of those longer reads, to break that up and use some assistive technology, it's highlighting the word, it's allowing students to see the word in the context, in the literature, and, that's a good way that all parents probably don't even think about that they have access to with the one-to-one program at home. Do you have any thoughts on that? Of using a tool like that?
I don't have a problem with assistive technology, but we have to be careful when we are incorporating assistive technology to what we're assessing. And so if the kid is supposed to read a passage to answer questions at the end, certainly assistive technology. But if you're taking a Dibbles test, you can't have a reader read it and then the kid answer the questions, because you're looking at and I should have called it not Dibbles, Acadians. But it depends on really what you're assessing. And if you're initially, like I explained to the one parent, in order to become a proficient reader, you have to hear somebody read proficiently. And so I do know at the elementary level, the teachers use it all the time. Today's story is going to be, and then they do a book walk with that. Then the kids guess what's going to happen in the book, and then they do a page walk to predict, make those predictions, and then the teacher might read it on day 2. She might have them listen to the recording of it. Then maybe on day 3, they might actually read it independently, but they're building that background knowledge about the story. They're hearing it, they're interacting with it. So I don't have a problem with using the technology that you have at hand, because a lot of times, a lot of our parents have to work. They're not at home. They want to, they just don't have the time. They're working. And so if there's a tool to help the kids hear the way that it's supposed to be read, or they're struggling with a word and they can hear somebody pronounce it correctly, it's better it's learned correctly the first time than to be the teacher that has to unteach that incorrectly spelled word or sounded out word. And so it depends on what your purpose is, really.
Pam, thank you very much for joining us this evening. We are going to broadcast this family engagement night on our BPTV. And we appreciate the expertise that you've brought, and clearly the many, many years that you've serviced children in the community, and how you are continuing, teaching the skills to the adults that help teach the children. So thank you for your effort. Very much appreciated.
I want to take the time to thank you and your audience and your school district for inviting us into your school district tonight. Certainly, like I told you, this is a different format for me presenting on a screen to an audience. And so I really hope that each of you have a takeaway from this. There will be handouts that will be emailed to you along with that reading chart, which I think it's critical for everybody to know about that reading chart, how many minutes you should be focusing on reading. And I just thank you for your time and attention.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And so at this point, we are going to continue to use the mic because we are recording with BPTV, and so we'll have to use that. But we have here a representative from the library, Bethel Park Community Library's children's program. It's Elaine, right? Elaine Volpe is here to talk to us tonight about some of the programs with the Bethel Park Library.
Thank you so much. And I really don't want to take up too much more time. I'm just here to let you know the slew of resources that are available. We are there to serve children birth through teens, and we're really proud of the collection that we have for all of those age groups, as well as the classes and programs and events that we offer for all of those ages. So I think it's important to remember that even if you can't get your child into the library to come check out a book, that's okay. Maybe they want to come to a class or come to a fun program, and then what happens 99% of the time is that they just become curious and they see a book and they want to check it out. So it happens very naturally. So I think that's really important to remember, is to always make reading an enjoyable experience. I'm guilty of this myself as a parent. I kind of forced books on my kids because, being a librarian and working there, I was, had all these amazing books every day, and I couldn't wait to bring them home, and then I would be so sorely disappointed when my boys didn't pick them up. And I did. I had forced reading time. Now, when they were little, they absolutely loved it, and that's some of my, I don't know if it's theirs, but some of my fondest memories is reading to them. But as they got older, they just really didn't want to pick up that book. That's okay. I know it's really hard, but we have to resist that urge to force reading upon them and just make it a relaxed, enjoyable, casual experience. So one of the simplest things I think we can do is just bring them to the library. Again, don't say we're going to check out X number of books. We're going to check out any books. Just come to the library to play. Come to the library to hang out. Come to the library, it's a place to meet new friends. And then again, there are so many books there, they're going to want to check one out. To speak to the one question about, I can't find anything that interests my child. I really do think it's important that you just find their interest and then connect them with that book. Maybe it's not a fiction book. Maybe it's a nonfiction book. Maybe it is a biography. Maybe it's a graphic novel, right? There are so many different types of books out there, too, in different formats. We can always connect a child with something. I promise you that. That's like our biggest challenge. That's what we live for. So we'll do it. We'll make it happen. That's our mission. So bring them in. We want to get to know them. So you just want to make a child feel comfortable in the library too, right? Because all throughout their life, they're going to have to use a library. I have a son in college that, sometimes he still calls me for resources, but I'm like, go to your library. You want to make them comfortable knowing how to access materials and comfortable enough just to come and ask a librarian. That's what we're here for. So that's probably the simplest thing you can do, is just bring them to the library, make that part of your routine. And I get it, with working parents, that's sometimes really difficult. Maybe you can come even just once or twice a month on Saturday. We are open on Sundays. Come when you can and just get them to the library. The other thing that I think is a really simple thing is just setting the example, demonstrating that. If you want them to be a reader, then let them see you reading a book. This is another thing that's really hard and that I too am guilty of, but try to put the phone down. You don't want your children to see you constantly texting or looking stuff up or even chatting with your friends on the phone. Try to kind of limit that habit and set the example. If you are not a reader yourself, pick up a newspaper or a magazine, but let them see you reading, because you are their number one example. Have a home library. Always have books on your shelf or on your coffee table. Have them in different rooms of your house, but just have books readily available. I can go on and on and on, but these are just 3 simple things that we can do. At the library, we stress heavily with our early literacy classes, 5 practices: read, write, sing, talk, and play. These are things that we make sure we do at the library when the kiddos are with us, but it's also the 5 things that we encourage parents to make sure they're doing at home. And that's for early literacy, so keys to, like kindergarten readiness. By the time we want to get them into school, we want them doing those 5 things. But really, I think that can carry on all throughout school, right? You always want them reading, so again, set that example. Talk to when they're young, that's how you initially build their first vocabulary. And even before they can respond to you, they're still understanding and they're building that language. But as they get older, keep talking to them, right? Because that's how you continue to build their vocabulary. Talk about their day, talk about what they're doing in school, talk about what they want to do this weekend. But I just think as they get older, it gets more and more difficult, right? Because they have so many activities and you're running and eating on the go and you don't really have that time. Or when they become teenagers, they kind of want to just come home from school and hole up in their rooms, right? Like, I get it, but try to carve out some time to just talk to your children. So reading, talking, singing. Okay, maybe your teenager doesn't want to sing with you anymore, but just music in general is important and really enhances learning. So have music playing in your home. Read, write, sing, talk, play. Play is important. That's how our little children learn, and we are very proud of the play space we have at the library. It's a pretty large play space that we swap out the materials and the toys monthly to always keep it new for the kids. That is the single most important way they learn, is through play. But again, as they get older and they're in more activities, it's important to carve out time to play or to just relax or to have downtime. We don't want our kids to get stressed out, right? And then writing. Even as early as 2 years old, when they're first learning to scribble, that's the first steps in learning how they're going to print or write their name. So we scribble with our toddlers. Don't be afraid to, get out the crayons and paper at home. But then again, as they get older, have your kids write. I remember, my kids were just constantly texting on the phone, and they would never want to sit down. I was big on making them write thank you notes, right, if they got a gift, something like that. It's becoming a lost art, but have your kids write. So those are just 5 things that we can just always keep in mind. Again, it applies mostly to the little ones, but it really can carry on throughout their, educational career.
I can think back to one of the best things my children ever did when they were learning to read. And I think this was really great. And it kind of ties into what Pam was talking about with that repetition. Well, first of all, I know we can all relate that little kids, even elementary age, well, heck, even adults, sometimes we like a movie and we will watch that movie over and over again. Like if you're flicking at home, Harry Potter, I love to watch. I could watch that all the time. When my kids were little, they loved 101 Dalmatians. The puppies. They're the same way with reading, like she said. And when my kids were learning to read, the teacher had them, had a small book, just a small book, maybe even like your picture books. And they would read it to 5 different people. So maybe mom, they could read it to their cat. They could read it to their stuffed animal. They could call up grandma and read it on the phone. And that repetition, and that kind of goes to using technology. So you're building a foundation, and that's what fluency is really all about, is that automaticity with the words and the sounds and putting all the connected text together. So that was just a strategy that my children had in elementary school that really worked for them. So we might think, oh, you're reading that again, but reading those things over and over again really, really can help make those connections and cracking the code. And now we call that warm readings. You have a cold reading. Like Pam said, you may want to know what a student's true reading fluency is. But at home, we don't have to worry about that. I think at home, it's better to have that warm reading, repetitive and comfortable and what their interests are. So those are just some thoughts I wanted to share about the love of reading, and so happy to be able to have you all here tonight and present this topic.
Okay, so what I wanted to do here real quick was point out a few things. If I know we have some elementary school parents here this evening. We have a really fabulous group of people in our school district called Instructional Support Teachers, IST, Instructional Support Teachers. And in particular, one of our IST teachers, Mrs. DiGregorio, had put together a web page resource of all types of resources. You can find it on any elementary school page when you scroll down to instructional support. So that's on every elementary school webpage. And what it does is it gives you examples of what IST is, because maybe you're a parent that really, is concerned about how your child is progressing, and you want to see maybe some of the first step resources that the school district might have. IST is certainly one of those processes that does help target weaknesses in students' math and reading abilities. But you'll see that there's a lot of different resources for each grade. We've talked about DIBELS. You heard the term DIBELS, which measures many different skills. Letter naming fluency, first sound fluency, nonsense word fluency, meaning they know how those sounds go together, even if they're not words. Phoneme segmentation fluency, oral reading fluency, and you'll see under these a bunch of hyperlinks. So like first sound fluency, if you've got a really young one, there's activities, where you can roll dice and they'd have to pick something from, they'd have to do the first sounds of the word. So this is like a little bit of a game, where they do first sounds. Like if they rolled a 4, egg, what's that first sound? Eh. Bunny, buh. They would be able to pronounce these words, based on a game with you, and you would be able to, mimic, what you would want to see from them. So this is an example of different kinds of resources, and there's many, many, many on here. We said like nonsense words, posters, and flashcards. So that's not a proper word right there. It's a nonsense word, but the big deal there is obviously phonemic awareness. And again, there are things that you can do with your children. You don't have to make it up yourself. And it's all right here on the IST website. Let's say you have an older child in 3rd grade. You can see what the different standards are for ELA and math if you really want to know what your child should be able to do. They have resources for all the textbooks. All our textbooks that are online have many different kinds of interactive activities. And as you can see here, they put, hey, sign in with Google, last name dot first name at bphawks.org. Every child in the district, that is their sign-on with Google. This is the password for the textbooks if you're in the elementary. You can see they have them written right there. But you can go and get and use these links to look at the books, okay? You can print flashcards, multiplication, iPad apps that they recommend if you have an iPad at home. Multiplication videos. And I know we're here to talk about reading this evening, but this is just an example of some of the different resources. High frequency words, grade 3 to 6. So these would be cards that have the high frequency words that kids would be practicing within our Wonders program. So that means, your children are going to see these words in school. So if you want to have time to be able to go through what they're going to see in school, it's all right here for you. So the IST teachers have done a really wonderful job of getting that resource loaded with lots of good activities, and I would highly recommend it. Also, this may not have it here. Let me see if we can get it. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So on your child's browser, if they're using a Chromebook, or if they're at home at your house and you're using any computer, but you want to load the Chrome browser on your computer. When children sign in to their account, and they would be able to do that, there's usually an icon right up at the top, they'd be able to sign into their BP Hawks account, which loads the settings for the district. The district has purchased this Read Write Google for any student in Bethel Park. And when you click on that, and the first time you use it, a lot of times it's going to make you sign in. And of course, it's going to make me sign in here. So let's see. But if we go back to that resource here, just as an example. You can see that here a bar comes up. And Read Write Google works in 3 different environments. It works on a web page, it works on a PDF, and it works in Google Docs, which for the purposes of what we're talking about today, we're not talking about that use. We're really talking about the web resource. But what it can do is when you click on hover speech, when you click over a word or put your cursor over a word,
Click here to see a sample PSSA test for Ella. Click here to see a sample PSSA test.
and you can see that it will read the material that's on whatever you put your cursor on. When you touch on hover speech, it will read that word, or read that line, I should say.
Choose login as a student. Search Bethel Park and all schools will come up.
So, and the reason I mention that is because, parents probably don't really even realize that that's there for their children. I need to do a better job of publicizing that, and here tonight, is one of those examples. Now, anything that you pull up on the internet, you're able to use this puzzle piece if it has readable content. So I want you to be aware of that puzzle piece. If it's not there, if you click on this puzzle piece, which shouldn't be confused with the other puzzle piece, it's your extensions. And you can manage your extensions that you have access to. And Read Write Google, I clicked on the blue pin, and that pinned that resource up there. But, I think sometimes when kids, are taxed with reading and they just need a break, but they still need to get the content, they just need a break, because they don't want to be reading. That's a pretty great resource to use for some of the nighttime activities, that maybe they're worn out from the day. So that's something else I wanted to just show you real quick. So those are 2 resources here within the district. I really want to push the IST website. I think it's really geared into what our teachers do in the classroom. So if you're looking for stuff that is really on point with what your children are doing, search no more, go to the IST website.
So, there's no topic more important than reading, reading and education. Like everybody said tonight, it's just so important for life. We need this. It's so important for our children to be successful in life. The statistics with, having a higher paying job and, having more opportunities in life. So I think we would be remiss to think of anything really more important than this topic, and we really appreciate the time for those who came, and hopefully many more people will get this information through the TV or online. And please do come to our 4th session on OVR, which is the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. So this is more for primary and elementary students. OVR is more for the secondary transition, where students are looking for post-school outcomes with employment and post-school opportunities of education. And that's on April 4th at 7. And that will be a virtual presentation. So look for more information coming on that.